Hello, you two. We are at our final recording for class for Witchcraft 2. And this one's called Coven Workings. And so this one is a little bit complex. Excuse me while I put on my temple necklace here. This one's a little bit complex because there's a lot to cover, which may not seem important initially. As always, the expectation is you read the chapter, the Book of Shadow, and the accompanying materials, whatever they may be, including the handout that I sent to you, which would be the normal posting to the daily classroom, but I just thought that would be more helpful for you if you had the handout itself. So for this particular one, I'm gonna break it into two parts, and there's gonna be separate recordings, but it'll be paused so that I can adjust for each of them. And the first part is informational. Then we're going to do a working, and then it's gonna be more informational, and then we're gonna talk about initiation. And I've already written notes for those things, so we can sort of go through what that looks like. You will want to get the green cord for self-initiation, and you can get that from the templeofwitchcraft.org web shop. In the shop, they have the green cord. Remember that cord, if you're not getting there, is basically an upholstery cord, and it needs to be between 9 and 13 feet long, the same size as the last cord that you got. That's the best, because ultimately after Witchcraft 2, you start to braid them together. Right now there's only two cords when you're done, and what I usually do is I knot one end and I knot like two or three along the middle and then the end so that they all don't just sort of like hang there. But anyways, so this is where we're going to start with this, which is um, the purpose of this final lesson is the understanding of how group dynamics in ritual settings and magical minds work together. Um, it is different when things are invoked, and not everyone is trained in this, and this is not really clear in a lot of books. And unless you're going through a lodge, a mystery tradition, or a very healthy circle, you're not really going to get exposed to this very much. But it is important because you are essentially following the pattern of becoming your own priestess. If there was other people in this class, I would say priest or priestex. Priestex applies for you. Please use that. Um, Essentially, the lessons that you have practiced this year are the pattern of initiation that you will conduct at the end of the class. Just like in Witchcraft 1. This is the reason why we do the homework. This is the reason why you follow the instruction of the homework and do those specific lessons, because you are touching the pattern of our mystery tradition and magical order each time, so that when you get to the end and you do the ritual, you successfully connect with the current. If you're off doing your own things and you're just doing the ritual as you see fit and you're getting great magical experience, that's great. You're not connecting to the ritual patterns. You're not connecting to the consciousness of the temple. So this is why we have you do those specific things, because our tradition is a magical order which is founded on shared practices. Those shared practices are the very rituals, incantations, chants, prayers, and methods that you have received not only in Witchcraft 1, but now in Witchcraft 2. The inner temple trained you for the inner workings so that you are prepared for the outer workings of the second degree. So, what do I want to say about the lessons of this year? These are things that you primarily will do for yourself. That means, what does this year ultimately qualify you for magic? But ultimately, being your own priesthood, right? Being your own divine authority, your own connection and facilitator to the gods. That's what this year is for, to establish that for yourself. But it doesn't mean you can't perform magic in circles with what you know with other people or in other groups. Now, we don't have oaths, but we do have private material. So there is, the materials we've given you, you don't share those with other people, but you can use those as inspiration and say, I am in the Temple of Witchcraft. I am an initiate, and this is how we do these rituals, and create a ritual in which you do for someone or lead someone else through, right? So I hope that makes sense. Jesus said, when two or more gather in my name, I am there, right? So there's a power of three that's in Christianity. It's in the Holy Trinity, it's in this saying, and it's in the magical mindset. When we gather together in a capacity of three or more, a like mind is created. And when magic is done in this way, something greater happens. It's not to say that it can't happen when there's only two people, right? But just think about the classes that you have taken or the work that you have done one-on-one with someone or by yourself, and when you've done it in a group setting, specifically when the group setting has, you guys have never been to any of our Wheel of the Year gatherings that we had at the UU church, but those are so very intense because the magic that you're experiencing individually is shared with all the other people who have also experienced it individually together. And it's the magic of our order. It's the magic of our tradition at play. Um, when we do magic in those spaces, big things can happen because mutual support in a shared group mind occurs. Essentially, that's what a coven would be, right? So let's look at some of those things when we're talking about coven work. And I'm going to be very honest with you. I've had very little coven experience because I don't like them. I'm not saying they're all bad. I just don't like the dynamic. I'm a very private person. I handle a lot of private material and energies for other people as individuals in sessions. And I do a lot of clearing of myself, and I tend to hold space for other people. This is why I can really, I could really do a circle. Um, but I don't always like the shared experience. I like a lot of ritual privately for myself. This is also one of the reasons why I like the Temple of Witchcraft is because we are not a coven and we don't promote covens. We are not a coven-based tradition, so that it's not based on a coven, the reason that we are. Um, we are scholastically based and method based. Um, so I'm just going to pause for a second. I needed a coffee refill and to blow my nose. I'm giving you information here that's essentially like the baseline information from the temple, and a lot of that is from Christopher's experience, and I'm throwing in my experience. So I just want to be clear about that, that I'm really speaking a lot from my own experience to the material that you have. Um, a coven is a group of people, witches in particular, who gathered together with a shared common purpose. They have like a praxis, which is theirs, and an intimacy of common goal that forms a coven, and it may have a charter. It usually has some sort of written codes of conduct, and these are things that everyone agrees to, and they keep secrecy around that. A coven is not a social group that gathers for magic or drinks or joined on a Patreon. I'm a Patreon person. That's one of my primary sources of income and the way that I support myself. It is not a coven. There are groups that say they are an online coven. I can't speak to those as whether those are really true or not. I'm not trying to deny anyone that experience, but I'm saying a coven is a dedicated magical group with us that has specific influences and magic. And beyond that, um, there are sort of dynamics to it that sort of come into play. So a coven is three or more. 13 is the modern traditional number, and it's usually capped there. So when you find traditions in like the Alexandrian tradition, whatever these traditions are, it's usually around 13 and then it's capped, and then at after that it starts to hive off and they form separate covens elsewhere, and those people do those work, and that's how those covens grow. Christopher says 14. At 14, it tends to get a little weird because it's hard to focus on the work with success. When you have too many minds all attempting to agree upon the same thing, that's where you can have problems with covens. Um, with covens, this is also why I say and have said since Witchcraft 1, you don't put your spells out there for everyone to know. I don't even think sometimes that you should tell your partners the spells that you're doing unless they're explicitly involved in the magic and in 100% agreement with it. You should not be telling your intimate partners your spell work. And the reason because that is their mind, remember we're all part of the great mind, affects the outcome of the spell. So in a coven setting, you have, let's say, you have 13 people, you're all together, you've all seen the spell before it is cast. So everyone has looked at it. This is why you're sharing your things with me so that we understand the way that this process works. That everyone who's participating in this spell or ritual is in complete agreement with it for you or for whatever the result is. If they don't know it and they show up to do this spell and they don't agree with it, then that disagreement will affect the result of your spell. It will change the course of the manifestation. This is why you don't do this is lots of reasons why in the start of this I said don't have all of these distractions of things. Don't include all these things in your thing. Be very specific about your intention. Include the right resonant pieces. Always do it in a circle. All of these things are girding you for the privacy and the power of the work so that it's surrounded in love and is in the place where the greatest wisdom can come through for it. That love, will, and wisdom is available to you and not influenced by all of these other things. This is why you're choosing specific moon things. This is why you're choosing directional guides and guardians. This is why you're choosing deity names, even if they're the great deity names. This is why you're choosing all of those things because this is the pattern of the magic, the way we do it as a tradition to make it work well and best. And also cuts out a lot of the static that can prevent these things from working. This is not just about manifesting like what you want as far as like, get it. And I believe you should get it, right? But it's also like if you're doing healing for someone, if you're doing blah, blah, blah for someone, using these models ensures success. Not only because they're stable models, but because they're connected to the battery of the tradition, which adds power to what you're doing. We'll talk about that later. When you see tradcraft covens, traditional witchcraft covens, this is BTS or British traditional witchcraft sometimes, or just tradcraft covens. The Green Men store in North Hollywood is one of them. I know I mention them a lot, but that's because I know them and I know that they are this. And I don't know all of their workings, and I'm not saying I know everything about them. It's not that, what I'm saying. I'm just using them because they're an at-home example. They have roles and specific people who do certain things. And in some tradcraft, that could be a priest and priestess. These can be elemental guardians, or these can be people who are specific types of mediums who work with spirits. If you've ever been to their Samhain ritual um, in October, November, you'll see what that looks like. There's a cauldron in the center. There's a high priest and high priestess. There's people turning the wheel, the grist. They're grinding the wheel in the center, and there's people in the four directions calling out the names of spirits, and like there's someone helping the spirits to cross through. These are all very specific roles that you'll find in tradcraft, or you may find in tradcraft covens. Um, and they can be fixed. With the one example of covens, say there's a priest and there's a priestess, usually a partner or a good friend, someone that can work very intimately together when they're holding these energies. And then it may rotate, like who's calling in the elements. Sometimes it's other participants. Sometimes it's just the priest and priestess, and everyone else is just raising the cone of power and doing the magic and energy work. These may shift around so that everyone gets a piece of the working to a degree. Not everyone gets to be the priest or priestess, right? In more modern traditional covens. When it becomes full and people want into that, or they want to do more, they may hive off, is what they usually call it, and they form their own covens. And then they'll have their partner and they'll be priest to priestess, and then or however they manage that, it's like not gender specific roles. But then they'll build a body of 13 members, if they can. And then that coven may hive off and form another, and they have distance from each other, right? They may have shared workings and they support each other because they're in a greater egregore or current of energy, but they have their own unique individual work, even though they may do things very similarly. Um, In a tradcraft group, you may find that some of these people take positions, and that's the position that they take, and that's the position they take till the day they quit the coven or they die, right? Like that's what they do. They work with the spirit, and that's the way it is. I know in some Asatru or Norse tradition, I know people who do very specific things, and that's specifically what they do. And they don't have coven structures like you might see in other places. They have blots and they have other ways of forming groups that are magical groups, but not necessarily covens, although they might call themselves a coven, and we're not here to judge what that is. My general rule of thumb that I learned from Christopher at the Temple of Witchcraft is never assume and always ask questions. So when someone says, oh, blah, 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 the coven, we're going to do these things, you can say, what does that mean for you? And and so I understand what I'm doing and blah, 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 blah. So like you get a clear picture because it might not be what you think it is. That is the beauty of the modern broad umbrella witchcraft and paganism term of things is that these things are interpreted in different ways. You can have Aquarian style covens. These are more lateral, and this is kind of what is inspired in the Temple of Witchcraft. They work best when everyone is at the same level of training and understanding. We do that as a school, um, where we have level systems, but these are working around rather than up, right? I'd say they work around, up, down, and up, right? And then back to center, right? Um, but it's not like, apostolic, like, oh, the Pope is giving you the power to do the thing and like, bend the knee and all that sort of stuff, right? Like it's more of a group around the cauldron of community that we create these things. And the cauldron is held by the members who have participated in the patterns of rituals to which you are initiating or do these workings with. Um, so we're not a coven, but we do have an Aquarian style of things, which is not a top-down system. We have a charter, right? Like we have a book, that's published that you can get that basically tells you how and why what we do. We give you the temple handbook at each level, the revised and updated copy because it does change. It's a living document. This tells you how everything works in the temple because you have initiated into the temple. Um, there are not everyone who practices magics together is in a coven. Magical groups sometimes call these lodges. And these are groups of practitioners, and lodges can have more than 13 people in them. Um, you look at like the Golden Dawn or the Oreo Templis Orialis, the OTO. These high magic traditions tend to have larger groups. Not all, they can have small groups, and they tend to be involved with geographical areas and geographical spaces, meaning that they have like set lodges and temples where these things happen, and the focus is on those temples and specific temple spirits, deities, and rituals, colors, signs, numbers, dates, all those sorts of things. So what do I want to say? So how do we start to I'm hoping you're seeing the nuance of these sorts of things because you can have like a group that's like, the Witches of Eastwick, not the show, but the movie. That someone's the devil, Jack Nicholson, right? And they have a group mind because they're good friends, and they come together and do magic. Are they a coven? No, they're kind of a coven when they get the demon, right? They get the spirit. Um, but they're definitely a group, right? But are they an official group? Do they have a charter? Do they have any of those things? No. So they're not a tradition, right? Um, Are they a circle? Do they even cast one? No. Right? So they're kind of like a collective, right? You can have a circle, which is a group of people who come together to do circles, but they're not necessarily a coven because they don't have a very specific shared value or charter that defines what that coven is, right? And they all agree to it and they all support and promote and maintain that, right? They may not have specific roles within those things, but you could have people who have specific roles in a circle, even though it's not a coven, right? You start to see how it gets interesting, right? Um, is it a tradition or is it just a fly by your seat of the pants and this is what we're doing and it's all intuitive in nature, etc.? Both are great. What defines a tradition? A tradition is shared experience, knowledge, mythos, common symbols, and same initiatory experiences. The Temple of Witchcraft is a tradition, therefore. Is it an order or just a group or a coven? An order, because it could be all, right? An order is the organized tradition and includes bylaws, administrators, and those who uphold the body of tradition. And you see this more in lodges and covens and other tradition-based things where you have magical orders. So we say the Temple of Witchcraft is an Aquarian tradition, and we are in a magical order because we have the bylaws and all these sorts of things, and we have a shared methodology and a general mythos of goddess, god, and great spirit and other things, which tends to get a little bit more deeper after you graduate at higher levels of the temple. And after you graduate and you participate with the Society of the Temple, the 9 levels that are there, the inner sort of working of things that really fuel our culture in certain ways, our arts, and I don't know if that's the right word for it, but like it's a um, initiate based part of the work only. You can only have taken it if you've done certain levels in the Temple of Witchcraft. These define us, right, as different than just a circle or just a group or just people practicing magic together, but we're not a coven, right? Temple is a tradition. We don't have a coven tradition. We are an order. So you can practice what we do solitarily. You can do it in small groups. You can do it in large groups. We don't have hard coven teachings. You can choose that. If you want to form a coven, you can do that. The organization body of the temple doesn't tell you what to do in the structures you choose, but you are also not initiating anyone into the temple through your coven. So it all goes through the mystery school. So you can have a coven, people can participate in the coven, but they don't participate in the mystery school. The mystery school is separate. That's a separate thing. You could do magic, but it's not the Temple of Witchcraft coven, right? That's your coven that you're doing, maybe what you learned in the Temple of Witchcraft. And again, only what initiates can share, right? That sort of thing. What do I want to say about covens? I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. The interesting thing about covens is that a lot of people will compare them or feel that there's a family dynamic in them. And that's because there tends to be two parental-like figures and various degrees of things. So there's like the third degree, the high priest or high priestess, a kind of parental thing. One or both, or some variation of that, because we know that families and parents all look different. And then elders within that community and people with roles, and then initiates are people coming in, so there tends to be like a kind of like newbie, children, greenie kind of thing, and elder long in the tooth, wise, etc. There's that kind of energy that sort of plays out in those. I'm not 100% sure exactly why it tends to ping a family dynamic when you have a true coven, but it can. So what happens is then not everyone agrees on what a good family is or what a family is. And not everyone has a good family history. So some people in a coven may have had a very wonderful family and a great childhood and a lovely upbringing and have great models of parents who did their damnedest and showed up for their kids. And they have a very healthy psychology around family. I'm thinking of several friends as I think about this. And then there are some people. Oh, can you hear the rain? I wonder. It's really pouring. Some people do not come from that same upbringing, and they had a lot of struggle, adversity, or abandonment, or some abuse, something in that family, and that is embedded in your psyche, whether you're conscious of it or not. Right? We get into this in Witchcraft 3 a lot, but and I was just listening to a great talk on this. even the things that you are unable to consciously digest as an identity because you were so young, you were a baby, you were just absorbing, you still absorbed. And whether those were malicious or intentional things or just accidental because your parents are people and they're bumbling along too and finding their way, but it was scary to you, even though it may not have been truly harmful, it imprints into your psyche. And so that lives there, and it's a program that runs. When something happens, when something occurs that is reminiscent to the energy vibration or scenario of that on a deep subconscious level, that triggers that energy pattern for you, and the feelings arise again. And you may never know what that is because it's pre-memory, right? But it lives. It lives in you. It's a dynamic that lives in you. That's par for the course of life. When you get into a group that works magic together, specifically a coven working because it's so intimate, you're activating. What does magic do? It activates and empowers the user. But it's not just the parts that the best foot forward, it's all the parts get activated in magic. So even the parts that you don't want to deal with, the less desirable. Honestly, this is why we do inner temple working. You develop the tools to work with yourself within. Outer temple, you build a stable structure for your magic. And then we do the shamanic temple where we dive down beneath everything and get into the deep patterns of stuff before we ascend in the high magic. Because when we go up into those high vibration spaces, when we start to call in all of this power, it's going to resonate with every level, and the lowest responds to the highest is the best way that I can explain it. I think it was Austin Coppock in some podcast, although I could be wrong. I was listening to a podcast many years ago, so don't quote me on the source, in which they were talking about the epiphany of angels. You see them as, great shifts in weather patterns. In the sky, like the rain and all these sorts of things come in, and then they had a conversation about talking with angels or doing angelic invocations, which we do in Witchcraft 4, and how when this happens, when this angelic energy comes in, the darker shadowy aspects of our stealth vibrate. We have a reaction to it. We have to be mindful. We have to understand. We have to go through a training process to understand that when this stuff comes up that we might assign to trauma or bad memory or triggers and all these sorts of things, that's actually untapped, unused resource, material, consciousness, and power within ourselves, hidden love and creativity, aspects of who we are, that when these high vibration comes through, respond. If we haven't dealt with that energy, when we go directly into angelic high energy work and all this sort of stuff, and they come up, we'll be like, demon, monster, harmful energy, all of those sorts of things. And it's not usually that. It's usually ourselves, right? So we're not there right now, but I'm using it as an example. When we do coven workings, when we do these sorts of things, some of these patterns get activated and other patterns get activated because magic amplifies the witch. It amplifies you. You become larger than life. We are the great right. This is the reason we're doing that. We're taking the divinity in to affirm our own divinity, right? We are one with the gods, right? Heaven is to earth. Truth is to love, right? Let all paradox be resolved, right? All of this comes together to affirm our own divinity. And that includes all the parts of it, right? This is why the journaling is encouraged, and the meditation is encouraged, and the inquiry is encouraged, and the dispassionate approach to see this from a cult perspective and not a very attached, emotionally thrown around kind of way, that you can really start to explore those sorts of things. So just imagine that 13 people all come together from all walks of life, from all different experiences, and they're calling each other family and they're doing magic together. What one person thinks that means is going to be different from what other person means that means. And those are not just interacting with each other at this level of the personality, right? The middle self, but also the lower self, right? So these patterns come into play, and it can be confusing. And Some would argue that this is a way that these things are worked out, and I have heard that there are healthy coven structures in which this is addressed and handled. In Witchcraft 5, there are book recommendations for this, and I have one. I would have to look up what it is. It might be mentioned in the handout, but it's basically like a guide to being a priest or minister, priestess, etc., to others, and the types and ways these things come up, and what they, and how to handle them without taking it personally, because magic is bringing up these patterns. Magic is bringing it all together. So it can be volatile. Um, these things that come together in coven structures define what is called the magical mind, or egregor. Now, an egregor is not just how all the minds come together, although that is a large part of it. I'm still always studying egregors. This is something that interests me very much. Egregors ideally are created from, so it's basic. Egregor is basically the spiritual mind and energy bank of a tradition, group, or organization. So companies have egregors. Coca-Cola has an egregor, right? Not to invoke them. Cancel, right? But they have an egregor. They have a spirit. It is an entity. They don't necessarily have a deity, but they do have traditions, and they have lodges, aka warehouses and corporate offices, in which all of these things are promoted. That is an egregor. It's not very magical, but it is one. Churches have egregors. You know, magical lodges have egregors. Uh, Ideally, this is created from working with very specific spirits, which those spirits are maintained, or entities or deities, and the traditions that are folded around that keep it healthy and alive. Um, the interesting part of that is, like, I would say, speaking from our tradition, the Temple of Witchcraft, we have Goddess, God, and Great Spirit, and we have the Mighty Dead, and we have, the Tawathan, the four directional being that is the protector of the Temple of Witchcraft. All of those, the three rays of witchcraft, all of these are part, the countdown, the way we enter the tree, the trigger, showers of light, our banishing and invoking pentagrams, are the way that we do all of these things are part and parcel of the egregor, right? It's why it's this ring tradition around a cauldron of these things, and every participant is benefiting from and feeding into this sort of energy, which is maintained by lead ministers. Hello, and a council and other organizational individuals to keep it healthy, sane, and alive. But also, going with the coven example, other people come along and they bring with them their own specific deities and connections. Because not everyone who comes to the temple, even those who go through level 1, are fresh off, the boat, so to speak. They go through a process of their own. They may already be connected to certain deities, and they bring those deities with them. And what happens in an egregor in those instances is you may find those deities showing up for other people elsewhere without ever having mentioned it, right? My personal example of this is that let's see, after Witchcraft 5, I started to get, and I had graduated, so I'm a minister, like, I don't know if yeah, I was ordained. At that point, I'm an ordained minister in the temple. I started to have dreams of Yemaya, and she would come up in in many syncretized forms, such as Mary, Mary of the Sea, in other ways, goddesses of the ocean, and and it was I got something stuck on my foot. It was very interesting. They were very powerful dreams, and they were quite influential to me, so much so that a large part of the healing work is shaped around that. If you've seen ever my healing temple or participated in my more personal and specific Reiki attunements and processes that aren't your standard Reiki, she shows up there. Um, uh, as part of that healing thing, although she's much larger than just healing. I wasn't really sure where this was coming from or why it was getting it. But as that happened, I started to connect with certain individuals who I later learned had a strong connection with her. So I have a very good friend now who's like a little sister to me, and she has a very strong she's can't remember. I think she is Cuban. Yes. And she has a very strong connection to Yemaya through her family. She goes to the ocean, all those sorts of things. She appeared in my life and was really promoting it all the time. And I was like, wow, this is quite interesting. And I shared some things with her, and she gave me some prayers and things to do at the ocean. And then later, my former mentor, I had a series of dreams, and he's in the Temple of Witchcraft. And I had a series of dreams in which Yemaya was very prominent, really, really intense stuff where I'm like, I'm being touched here. I'm being talked to here. And he reached out to me and he said, "Hey, I'm sitting at my he's a priest to Yemaya. I didn't know this. He's like, "Hey, I'm sitting at my altar and I feel like Yemaya is talking to you. She wants to speak with you. She wants to be with you." And I was like, "Yeah, in fact, it's really weird. All of these things are happening." And I sort of spelled things out for me. And he was like, "Okay, that all makes sense to me now. I'm going to send you something. Can I send it to you?" And I said, "Yes, absolutely." I love that he asked permission because we don't just do readings for people. We don't just read them. We don't just be like, "Oh, you have a whatever." We don't just like do stuff, right? We ask. We're witches. We have boundaries, circles, permission, consent. Yeah. So this box shows up at my house. I've taken you into the previous healing room. You remember the statue of Yamaya. He sent me that statue. He'd got that in the early 80s, I think, when he went to Nigeria and completed his training that he had started in Boston. He went to Nigeria and went to the priest and had his sort of confirmation of things and completed his process. That was the statue that he had brought back. He had said, "She wants to come to me. She's going to come to you." So then she did. And that energy was solidified with me. While she could have come to me in any other way, I am certain that because she was in the egregor, because my mentor was not only a former lead minister, these are volunteer positions, people move out of them and into them. He is also highly influenced in the mystery school and with the founders. His energy is in our energy, and he mentors certain students only. He doesn't mentor everybody. And The joke around Chris is that Chris Giroux. So as you move through the temple and you go into higher levels, if you do, you will hear his name. He weeds out the ones who really aren't meant for the temple. This is what he's sort of like known for, right? Or he trains the ones who are exceptional, but just really need to tighten it all up and bring it together. So I was the one that needed to be tightened up and bring it all together. Um, and he was my mentor because they wanted to give him a break. I think that's what Christopher said. We're going to give him a break. We're going to give him you. Um, we think you'll like each other, kind of thing, but it's because I think that he worked with her and I worked with him as a mentor, and he brought her into the temple that she really showed up. But in the temple we don't promote any specific deities. We may, if you take the Path of the Moon class, which is really a great class, um, it'll take your moon magic to a whole other level. I've taken it once and I've audited it 3 times. Um, uh, you get a really big picture idea of who the gods are, but there are specific deities that are alive in the temple, either that have appeared through classes, like healing deity classes that are being promoted through the Facebook group. You see those a lot there, or the Facebook newsletter. They are there if you choose to work with them, and they come through other people. Um, what else do I want to say there? We have the temple directions, we have the fairy court, we have the archangels. We specifically work with Uriel, Michael, and Zadkiel. Um, you know, these sort of form the egregor of the temple, right? In addition to the participants, the ministers, and the methods that we use. So an egregor is fed, right? So this is something that ultimately needs to be fed. It's like a bank account. You want to put more in than you draw out. And this keeps it healthy. It creates a pool of support, contributing to the energy, but also the spirits and connections, which in turn contribute to the initiates and all of us who are doing it. It is fed by common actions, sayings, activities, and bonds of consciousness that the group as a whole do. Hail and welcome, blessed be, um, all of those sorts of things. These common workings, holding hands, the way that we do some chants, etc., 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 or just the type of ritual, the way that we structure the ritual, all of these common things affirm, feed into, or are fed towards those who are participating in them. These create that thing. So, you may go somewhere else to a different group of people, and instead of a common saying that they may say something different. And generally, what you do is you participate in whatever they're doing. I always say if you're going to go to a different structure of magic to ask to see, um, ask questions maybe before you go, or if the person who is facilitating a ritual, like you go to a ritual at some, event space or whatever, they're going to do this ritual, ask them, um, if there are any things that you should know prior to in order to participate in the circle better. So that leads around to the other side of this when I'm talking about rituals and performances of that sort of nature. Um, Sharing your work with others in what you do. Because in essence, this makes you your own priest. You're not a priest in the temple of witchcraft, right? You're your own priest, right? You're second degree. But you're going to do ritual for someone else, or you're going to go to a shop and you're going to do a talk, or you're going to do it at your, you know, Leia's going to do it at her Pilates studio, right? Like that sort of thing. And you're going to lead other people in it. From a teacher perspective, from my perspective, you have to speak to your audience, right? So you may want to do something extremely witchy. And speaking from experience, I have so wanted to just like take people into the deepest, most witchy things. But they don't know all this language and they don't know what any of these things mean. You're not going to be able to do it because they're not taught, they're not prepared for all of these things. So they're either going to miss them and be like, what was that? Why did we do it? And they're going to be thinking that the whole way through. Um, or they're just not going to connect to the energy. They're going to be like, yeah, sure, that thing, I said that thing, and they don't get it, right? There's a preparation to ritual consciousness that occurs. So it's not that you can't get something deep and magical out of a simple ritual or group. That's not what I'm saying, but I'm saying you have to know who you're talking to. You have to speak to your audience. You have to facilitate to make things easy, facile, to make things easy with those that you are working with, whether you're doing a healing for them or you're doing a seasonal wheel, right? All of this material is in your book. You've learned the basics of this and you have a functioning ritual setup. You have the architecture of the ritual to do any of these things. Or a moon ritual, right? Spell casting, manifesting, right? You have it. This is what you learned. This was the crux of this course. To do this for yourself, you could do it for someone else, right? So you have to know who you're speaking to and what they're prepared to do, and you adjust your ritual to that sort of thing. We did one where I was doing some rituals at the house for various astrological events, and I would align them after some spirit communication with specific deities. And we did one during Sagittarius season. There was a great lineup. I think it was 2017, 18, or 19, somewhere around in there. And it was specifically to the black. We were aligned with the cosmic center, with the black hole at the center of all things. That was a big deal about the whole thing. I think it was featured on Dark Star Astrology, and that was Lilith. That was totally Lilith. I'm like, we're gonna do Lilith. And I did an Eventbrite for it, and we actually had not only the people from the classes, but we had people come from outside of class to join us in the working. And I did a basic ritual. I invoked the four directions. God's got a great spirit. I cast a circle, did the great rite. I did all of the basic things. But in our visionary work and in our invocation and naming the work, I said we were connecting to this galactic heart to connect to Lilith to hear her messages, to receive insight from this great mother, this great goddess, and honor her as a being. That was the point of our magic. So everyone was going to get something individual out of it. We weren't doing any kind of collective working. So in the visionary working, I had to keep things basic to what I knew that they knew. And to start, I had to ask the gal and her husband who came what they knew, what they were comfortable doing. And they had their own private coven working ritual group. And so they were familiar with all the things. So I'm like, great, we can do all the bells and whistles. And I did. I didn't do it temple specific, but I shaped the ritual around a generalized call in of things in that sort of format. We called her in, and it was as if the shimmering, inky black goddess being enveloped the whole group of us and pulled us into the galactic center and writhed and streamed all around us. It was like a moving satin blanket that covered your whole body and just writhed all over you. It was just touching you, touching you, touching you. And it was joyful and it was sensuous and it was quite amazing. And I thought to myself, I wonder if anybody else is feeling this. Like this is something else. And then and then she was done. It was very clear she was done, and we released and we thanked her and we came back and we closed out the circle. And I was like, so how did that go from everybody? And we all had the collective experience. We all had the collective experience because our minds came together in the ritual. We all understood the way that the ritual functioned. We agreed that the ritual functioned in that way. We understood who we were invoking and why. And we were able to collectively agree that that's who we were bringing in. And so we did. We all felt the shimmering. We all felt the touch. We all felt the thing. And in fact, the gal and her husband who came, she said, I work with um, Lilith specifically. And that is precisely her signature of energy that came in. And she said that she wasn't expecting it. She didn't expect it in a group of people that she didn't know or whatever. Um, that energy hung around. I remember feeling it in the house for a few days. She kept on coming back and touching us and touching things. It was very beautiful. It was very lovely. That's not always going to be possible. You know, it's just not always going to be possible. If you're doing a big public event, a big public ritual, people on the streets, pagan pride, any of those sorts of things, this is your community. What you have learned places you within that community, however much you'd like to be a part of it. Not everyone there is going to have the same agreement of things. Not everyone there is going to want to go as deep as you want to go. Some people are just there for the ride. Some people are there to really work. Some people are there out of curiosity. Some people are there because they came with someone else who wanted to do the work or was curious. There's lots of reasons, and these will affect what's happening there. And you just have to adjust. You have to pivot. You have to change. You have to be the witch and adjust to what's happening and see where it takes you and what you're going to do, right? Like you just have to do those sorts of things. Just remember to speak to your audience, understand who you're telling the story to and what they're being invited in. When you have a coven, you can go deep. Covens have that inner and outer court. They have the outer version of what people see and they have the inner version of what's happening privately amongst those people because they have agreement with each other that supports each other. So there's that sort of thing. Lodges, orders, traditions, magical groups, even individuals may work in what is called an astral temple, and that will be the next leg of our class. I'm going to pause the recording right here. I'm going to take a break. I'm going to eat. I'm going to gather my notes, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to teach the rest of that class. So if you'd like to take a break right now, take a break as long as you'd like. I'd say maybe a 10-minute break, and I'll see you on that side of things. All right. So let's talk about a couple of other things, and then we're going to do a journey. And the primary thing that we want to talk about is the astral temple. Um, so, and astral temples in general and what they are, because we have one in the Temple of Witchcraft, for which we will visit at the end of this lecture. And then I'll talk a little bit about initiation as well. So you remember seven bodies, seven planes of existence, and the most prominent one in there are the astral, physical, and excuse me, the physical, etheric, and the astral. Which is we're going to focus on those for just a second. So if you remember that was the root chakra, the second chakra, and the third chakra, and then rising on the planes, that was the physical, the etheric, or that plane of forces around us, and then that astral level, or that first place where idea and energy materialize or manifest in some sort of form. This is what we're talking about when we're talking an astral temple. We're talking about it basically at this level or beyond. Some of them can be higher up in the force of things, but that's really a good level for that to astral temple to exist, for all these workings to occur with great potency of force and magic. So the astral temple, the astral temple is a place where we interface with the starry energy. Astral, astra means stars. These higher celestial forces interface with ours in this place at the astral level. It can come through in dreams. It can come through in places that we have created on the astral. It can come through in that place between when we cast our circle, but when we open the circle and the physical, we create the plane of forces. We open up the astral. That's what we're doing when we're casting the circle, right? So we cast the circle, the physical aspect of it taps into the plane of forces. This energy begins to move, and it, done well, opens the way to the astral, and these astral gates to the elementals and to the gods that we call in allow for these other things to occur. See? So we bring in our stones and our herbs and our other things, and we draw on that etheric power and the astral forces of our allies, depending on whoever we're calling, add shared force to that with shared images, with our intentions, etc. And it brings it all together, right? We raise that cone of power in the astral and we send it out into the universe to manifest into the physical in this place between, right? An astral temple is a specific place. It's not just like you cast a circle. It's kind of like an astral Zoom space. Like we all meeting on Zoom here. You're watching this recording over time and space. Um, it's a space where we gather to do magic distantly together, or if we were in a group where we would rise and go into mentally into that place, like in a journey or like many of the things that we have done before. But specifically, it is a shared story place. So it is a place like think about like maybe groups that have used like Shambhala or Avalon or the plane of the masters, the temple of the masters, or they go to these very specific places, these kind of like mythic places, these courts or these constructed places, um, and they do magic in this shared story place. Covens and traditions and lodges may have specific structures for this, where there is a shared whole space that they have for every individual involved in that tradition, lodge, or organization. And there may also be, in the case of covens, smaller spaces that are specific to the coven, and they may have a joint space to which they live in many sort of like pods of that energy out into it. If you're thinking of experimenting with this, what you want to do is you want to create this on a human level. It starts really at your altar in the physical, because this is easier to dismantle. If you create something on the astral plane and it's not fed, it begins to decay or it begins to look for energy. It might plug into other things. It might plug into you. You can become very tired and drained and drowsy and, all of these sorts of things. So we don't want to go there yet into those sorts of things. We're only going to work with the temple's astral space because that's maintained well. But I just want to say that if you want to play with this, you can sort of like temporarily put one together by creating a crystal grid with the intention and a purpose to go to an astral place to get the feel of it, like by going into your inner temple and finding a door that goes to this place, because your inner temple is an astral temple, right? So you can pair this inner temple by setting up ways in which you can connect to it on your altar, but don't try to do anything big or major right now. There are books out there on it. I would avoid those books at the moment, unless it's something very, very extremely interested in you and like you're driven to it. After class, you're welcome to send me messages and we can discuss that more. Many temples that we see in the world today, even the ones that have fallen into antiquity or crumbled into dust, right? They have physical spaces and they have astral spaces. Christopher likes to say, look at the Egyptian temples. Many of these physical temples have astral equivalents that still operate today because they were operated for thousands of years. They may be in ruins now, or they may be partially built. They may be touristic or whatever. But going there on the astral, they still have deities and entities that are involved with them, and possibly people who are doing it because they were operating for so long, they've sort of become self-excited in what they do. No guarantees on that. Always proceed with protection and guidance from your heart and your teams about what it is when you're deciding to like peek in an Egyptian temple or any of those sorts of things. Um, when creating an astral temple as a group, the group decides what the symbols are, what does it look like, and what's the lock? What's the password or passcode to get in so that only initiates can get into it or only people who are initiated into the tradition can enter it. There may be entities that are built into this in a combination of things, and they're part of the cooperative process of it, although working with specific entities can alter the flavor of things. So, for example, working with a specific healing deity versus a specific protection deity, there's a group in the Bay Area that specifically works with the Makas, the Ravens, the Morgons, excuse me, and they have a decidedly different energy vibration and flavor than someone who is working in another group that might be, let's say, aligned with Athena or aligned with Hestia or aligned with something else because they have a very specific deity. And that deity has its own agency. If you haven't figured this out by now, deities are not just constructs. The construct may be the way that you perceive them, but they are their own intelligence, which is much greater and powerful than ours. Um, that works with our agency, but um, they have their own judgments, aims, and desires that may be aligned with us or may not, and may have things that they need. So when you're creating a temple, I tend to avoid those things unless it's absolutely guided and directed. And at this level, I probably wouldn't do that at all if you were thinking of doing it. And again, this goes back to the whole magical name things that we talk about in Witchcraft 1, like, maybe avoid choosing a magical name that's named after a specific deity because that deity has its own agency, stories, and mythology. You have to be careful when you do those sorts of things because you can invoke that on yourself. That could be a very interesting thing that you don't want to experience. Watch out for the vows kind of thing, that sort of thing. So when we're talking about the Astral Temple in specific to this class and how it's useful for you, we're talking about the Temple of Witchcraft, to which you are an initiate and a member, and this Astral Temple is available to you. If you look at the Temple of Witchcraft in any of their logos, you will see a circle with 3 spirals in the center, 2 5-pointed stars, one pointed up, one pointed down, that create a 10-pointed star, and this is the Temple of Witchcraft, and 12 diamonds around that, and 12 spirits associated with it, right? This is the symbol of the astral temple for the Temple of Witchcraft. Um, it has a both public form and an inner or initiate form to it. When we're talking about that, we're using that as our key. And I'll walk you through that because we'll go through that meditation. But before we do the meditation, let's sort of see how we do it, right? And why it's there. Well, I mean, we've discussed why we have astral temples and egregores. For the temple, it's to keep it healthy and for the mystery school to be alive and for it to bring you to the place where you have self-empowerment and your own connection to the great mystery of things. But it has very specific images, as I've said. There's images, forms, and things that create access to these for the initiate. So when we go to the temple's astral, we go to, we do our countdown, we do the, walk to the tree. We generally look at the bark of the tree and we imagine this symbol, the 3 spirals, the 10 points, the 12 markers for the spirits. And we say that we are initiate and we would like access to the temple's astral temple. We would then go through the bark of the tree, down spiraling into the underworld, and across a field. This field usually ends at, or ultimately should end, at some standing stones. This is not like Stonehenge. These are dolmens. These are standing stones, and there are 12 of those for each of the 12 spirits of the Temple of Witchcraft. There is a stone altar in the center with a bowl of some sort with 3 fires in it of blue, red, and yellow for love, will, and wisdom, the 3 rays of witchcraft. There are many spirits associated with the Temple of Witchcraft. There are the 12 ministry spirits, which are found through the stones. Each of these stones represents a ministry. There are angels associated, as I said, with the temple, Michael, Uriel, and Zadkiel. And there's a fairy court associated with the Temple of Witchcraft, Queen Araxana and King Aubrey. There is a amalgamation or a chimera that is the combination of the 4 animal guardians of the temple that are the stag, the horse, the crow, and the snake. And it's called Tawathan. That's spelled Towathan, Tawathan. It is a serpent with the head of a horse, the horns of a stag, and the wings of a crow. And it is here that we go to maybe interface and ask questions of the temple spirits directly. We don't do a lot of like personal, you don't go here to do your personal spells, right? Like you go here for connection to the temple to ask questions of the temple spirits. Or in group settings working with the temple, we will often go here like at Temple Hearth and Temple Fest and some of our moon gatherings and any classes you might take with some of the priests and priestesses of our tradition who are teaching through the Facebook group that you can sign up for there or the newsletter. This is what we would use that for. The astral temple of a group is more for the group than it is for the individual, but sometimes the group uses it for individuals who need assistance, right? You know, there's that sort of thing. Connecting to the astral space can give you an idea of what this is like and how you are connected to it and how it supports you. So pay attention to that aspect of things. Ultimately, it is a tour, it is a visit, it is a touchstone for you to understand a deeper aspect of your connection to the Temple of Witchcraft. What else do I want to say? Before I get into a journey to the Temple Astral, I do want to just jump real quick to say you have the 1213 lesson. The 1213 lesson details for you precisely the ritual of initiation at the end. So you want your ritual tools. You want the green cord, the 9 to 13 foot cord. You can get that from the temple website. You can get it another cord, another upholstery cord that would suit that for you, but 9 to 13 feet, because you're going to ultimately blend these together. You're going to braid them together as you go along. And any of the herbs and things in the same ritual preparation that you did for the cords before, you're going to want to do this for this particular ritual. Here's the thing. You have to turn in your homework, including the plant that you took care of, whatever process that was, however successful you thought it was. That's not what I'm looking for, success. I just want the experience. And all the remainder, including the self-test at the end of the book, and send that homework in. When you have received pass on that material, you may proceed with the initiation ritual, but do not do the initiation ritual until you receive the pass. The model, when we talk about initiation means to begin. In essence, it means that you are not done, but that you have reached a level of proficiency in the journey, is now taking on a new level of things. You did that in level 1, and now you're doing that in level 2. Our model is the Aquarian model, which we hold. We follow a pattern, and the groove of that pattern, which allows you to connect to the egregor, which we've been talking about, and you will visit soon, of our tradition. This allows you to make your own direct connection when you do the initiation. We've established a good egregor, I think, and it's very healthy, and it's maintained by the cauldron of our community. Through the patterns of the homework and the lessons that you have done, this allows you to make a safe connection to it. On the day of your initiation, members will hold the space for your initiation. They will, and I will light candles for you. So we need to decide on a date for that initiation. So when you've both completed your homework, we will then look at a date to which you can both participate in that initiation if possible. I will turn that into the temple and everyone lights a candle for you. It's very nice. Um, the pattern is prepared through the work. And so I wanted to say that. So anytime I've gone through the homework and say, do it again, do it again, do it again. Where's this? Where's that? Where's this? That's me making sure that you've touched this pattern. Because if you haven't touched this pattern and you're not in the groove of our rituals and you're not in any of those things, that can be problematic. I'm not saying that it is for you right now, like in anything that you said, I'm not pointing out anyone in particular, but the point of that was to see if you connected to the pattern of our tradition, right? It's not just about learning magic and how to cast a circle. It's about being an initiate in the Temple of Witchcraft. You don't have to stay with the temple. You don't have to do, what we do, but in order to pass through this is to initiate in the forms that we've given you. Um, we have no terrestrial vows, we're not beholden to anybody, etc. I've all said all those sorts of things. Um, let's see, anything else that I want to say? Just a reminder, when you prepare the cord, you make a very weak tea of the herbs that are supplied in the instruction. You do not need all of the herbs. You need some combination of those herbs that works best for you. You will make a weak tea of that. You will add it to water. You will soak the cord in it. We usually do it for a day and a night to allow it to get that sun and moon energy, and then allow it to dry. And then, for some reason, my phone is um, on do not disturb, but I'm still getting beeps to it. Um, and that is the cord that you will want with this. The ring is the tool of the second degree, of the necklace in the first, the pentagram ring in the second. This is your second symbol of this because it represents witchcraft, and you are a witch because this is the temple of witchcraft in which you are an initiate, or whatever most significant symbol that is for you to use is with that ring. Let's see. I talked about names. If you want to choose a name or you have already chosen a name, you can use that when you use the paper and you burn it as part of your initiation. Remember that some people fast the day of initiation. This is not required. We may try it later on in Witchcraft 3 if you were there for that. Some people will do it 3 days before. On the first day of fasting, they will lighten what it is that they're taking in. On the second day, they will lighten a little bit more. On the third day, they will avoid all toxins and only have liquids or a small healthy breakfast. You have to do what it is that's best for you and your body. Don't fast if it's not for you. I would just say in general, it behooves you not to eat junk food or toxin, sugar, alcohol. None of you guys smoke, but you know what I mean? Like none of those things on the day of the initiation. You may come to this point and say, I don't want to initiate, and that's totally up to you. You could just turn in the homework and say, I didn't want to do the initiation and I'd just like a certificate of completion. Absolutely fine. No hard feelings at all. I would love for you to initiate and go a step further in the temple. You get the second degree files and information to go a little deeper with some of the initiate only rituals after that. Um, yeah, I think that's all I have to say with that. So, what we're going to do, if you want to take a break right now to get yourself ready, we're going to do a meditation. We're going to go into and connect with the astral temple of the Temple of Witchcraft. And for some reason, my phone is still beeping. I don't know why. So go ahead and prepare yourself for that. If you'd like to pause the recording, you can. I will get my phone to stop beeping. I don't know why this is doing that. And we will do the airplane mode. There we go. All right. Um, okay. Put yourself into a place of meditation to do this journey, sitting or standing, legs and arms uncrossed. We can generally sit in the Egyptian pose. That is the best pose for us, but no lotus position or no crossed legs or arms. This crosses the energy in our tradition. Head pointed to the heavens, body to the earth. Allow yourself to relax. Give yourself permission to physically relax, relaxing your physical body. from head to toe, releasing all tension in the physical that you can, all that is unnecessary and unneeded, all that is not yours, releasing all of that from the mind, allowing the mind to clear, the thoughts to blow away like white wispy clouds, to revealing the blue or night sky of your mind, whatever the sky is for you, allowing that to clear. The winds blow away all that do not serve. Tuning into the beat of your heart, feeling it pulse through your body. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. Perfect love, perfect trust, perfect love, perfect trust. And the light of your heart, allow the light of your heart to shine forth, to guide and protect you in all things. On the screen of your mind, we visualize the numbers. Beginning with 12, we see the number 12. Wipe it away, becomes 11. See the number 11, becomes 10. See the number 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And arriving in that meditative place where all we say and do is for our highest good and harm none. Allow the screen of your mind to fade and just feel the numbers, allowing yourself to drift deeper. 13. Feel the number 12 take you deeper. 11. 10. Going deeper, remaining aware. 9. 8. 7. Sinking into that magical frame of mind. 6. 5. 4. 3. 2. And 1. Arriving at that magical space, guided by our heart, guided and protected in all things, fully aware, deeply in our magical mind. On the screen of your mind, see the great tree, the great world tree, the witch's tree that connects the heavens and the earth, whose roots reach down into the heart of the earth and the underworld, whose branches reach up to the heart of the heavens, this massive tree. And feel the veil between you and it as you place your hand or pass your body through this veil, entering this astral space of the witch's tree. Standing before the tree, placing your hand upon its bark and its flesh. With your heart and mind, we visualize the symbol of the temple of witchcraft. This circle with the 3 spirals in the center. A 10-pointed star, 5 up, 5 down, and 12 points about it. The symbol of the temple of witchcraft beneath our hand on the bark of the tree. And we say to it, I am an initiate of the temple, and I seek entry into the temple's astral. I am an initiate of the temple of witchcraft, and I seek entry into the temple of witchcraft, astral temple. Allow the bark to part open and reveal a doorway that spirals down, spirals down, spirals down, and opens into a large moonlit field. A large moonlit field. In the distance, across the field, you see standing stones. And as you make your way forward, you feel the presence or essence of many spiritual beings many energies that compose the energy of the temple. You draw closer to the stones. You pass through the dolmens, 12 standing stones around a large stone altar, in the center of which is a bowl burning with 3 flames, blue and red and yellow, for love and power and wisdom of the witch's fire. You feel the energy of this place more open to you as you stand at this bowl and feel the 3 rays and the standing stones. We start in the east, we walk forward from the center, and we see the stone. This is the stone of the spirit of Aries. Hayan, 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 the warrior. We walk to the next, Widdershins, counterclockwise, to the stone of Taurus, the steward. Varest, Varest, Varest. The stone of Aries grows in ruby light. The stone of Varest grows in emerald. As we walk to the next stone, the stone of Gemini, the trickster, which glows in carnelian, and we call to the spirit, Zazaz, Zazaz, Zazaz. We walk to the next stone. In the north, the mother, Cancer, which glows like moonstone. We call to the spirit, Tamara, Tamara, Tamara. We walk to the next stone, the stone of Leo, the stone of the artisan, which glows in amber. We call to the spirit, Chutal, Chutal, Chutal. As we pass to the next stone, the dolmen of Virgo, the servant, sometimes the healer, which glows like fluorite. We call to the spirit, Yokutu, Yokutu, Yokutu. As we walk to the west, we approach the next dolmen, the stone of Libra, the judge, and we call to the spirit, the judge, Laramunth, 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 as the stone glows like rose quartz. as we walk to the next stone, the stone of Scorpio, which glows like black jet. And we call to the spirit, Nantur, 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 as we walk to the next stone, the stone of Sagittarius, the teacher, which glows in sapphire. And we call to the spirit of the stone of Sagittarius, Cicado, 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 as we turn to the south, and the stone of Capricorn, which glows like onyx. And we call to the spirit of Capricorn, Iopane, 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 spirit of the Father, as we pass to the next stone, the stone of Aquarius, the rebel, which glows crystalline like quartz. And we call to the spirit of Aquarius, Zarbata, Zarbata, Zarbata. And we come to the final stone between Aquarius and Aries, the stone of Pisces, which glows in amethyst, and we call to the spirit of the ecstatic, Kelan, Kelan, Kelan. As we return to the center, to the three rays of love, will, and wisdom, we feel the spirits of the 12 ministries around us. We call to Tawathan, 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 spirit of our tradition. We call to Tawathan, flow around us, guide us, commune with us. Feel the serpent, stag-horned, horse-faced, and crow-winged fly about us. Large, move about the circle, clockwise, spinning, flowing, until you feel it approach you. You may ask it questions or talk. You may receive a blessing or a gift. Whatever you feel called to do, I will remain silent. Perhaps other spirits come to you, a priest of the tradition, perhaps an animal, an ancestor, another being will come forward. If there's anything you should know to prepare for the work, be receptive and open to this. We then collectively, spirits and initiates, turn upward to the moon to connect with the consciousness of the moon through our temple, through these spirits, through these beings, through our own agency and witchlight, through the three rays, and the spirits of the temple of witchcraft. As I speak, so you repeat. Lady of the night, we pray to the moon. Mother of time and tide, we pray to the moon. Queen of the blue and white, we pray to the moon. Riding your silver chariot, we pray to the moon. Crown full of splendor, we pray to the moon. Three and one, one and three, we pray to the moon. Come walk among your children, we pray to the moon. Fill us, flow through us, your disciples, we pray to the moon. And allow the lady to descend. And we give thanks to the Lady of the Moon, to the temple spirits that have gathered, to Tawathan and the 12 spirits of our ministry. We give thanks to love, will, and wisdom of the three rays. We say to them all, hail and farewell. May there always be peace between us. So we make our way from the center and the bowl of the three fires, passing through the stones. Which two did you pass through? So we make our way away from the astral temple across the field, back to the tree, back to the place where we entered, and we spiral up, spiral up, spiral up, and out of the bark of the great tree, seeing the way close behind us, wiping away the sigil of the temple, the symbol of the temple of witchcraft, closing it completely, knowing that it is always there for the initiate to commune and connect with the greater current, spirits, and love, will, and wisdom of the temple. We pass back through the veil, back to our bodies, back to our physical forms, bringing with us all that we experienced. We feel the numbers as we count up. 1, 2, rising. 4, 5, 6, coming up. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Stabilizing at this place, bringing with us our experiences. We visualize the numbers 1, see the number 2, see the number 3, see the number 4, becomes 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 12. See the number 12 on the screen of your mind and wipe it away. Open your eyes, give yourself balance and clearance. Say to yourself, I release all that does not serve, although there should be nothing you need to release, just for practice. I'm in harmony with myself. I'm in harmony with the universe. I'm in harmony with the world. Open your eyes when you are ready. And that was the temple egregor. That was the temple astral space. And those are the temple spirits. And I always feel refreshed after that, although sometimes it can be a little intense. I've resent the homework syllabus alongside the recording, so you will have all of this. If you have any questions after watching the recording, before you turn in your homework, please contact me ASAP. You can send me an email or a text message, but text message only in an emergency. Email is preferred. I need it in writing. Or you can comment on the post in class, and I'll get back to you as soon as possible. And again, remember, when you are done, send everything in. Do not do the initiation. Wait. When you've received a pass, then go forward. We want to decide on a day. So I want to get your homework in first. And once you have that, and if it's not possible to do it together, don't worry about it. Don't stress about this. There's a lot going on. We can say whatever day that you're going to do it, then I'll let the temple know and we'll light candles for you on that day and you could do your initiation. You'll want to buy the cord and you'll want to look at the materials to make sure you have the herbs and things that you need. Use what's on hand. You just gone through a class about correspondences, right? Find your earth correspondences and use those things. The minimum is the cord. The candle that you have that I gave you, the light from that candle, um, is the one that you will want for that, and the paper that you use to start the whole program. Your tools, you'll want your tools for those as well. So yeah, there you go. We'll have one more meeting after this. That meeting will be after everything is said and done, just to do a roundup, to have a talk. It won't be a class. It'll just be like a get together just to sort of see how it goes and where we're at and what's next. And we'll do that when we do it. So I really appreciate you. I really appreciate how well that you have been able to go through this course despite all the obstacles we've experienced this year. We started off good and then we've had fires and I've had health things and there's just been so much going on and you guys have done such a great job. It is a testament to understanding how magic is when times are stable and when times are unstable and how we best work with those things. You now have tools to complete all that you need to for these final lessons. Just be on top of communication with me and we're all good. Blessed be, blessed be, blessed be.